Well, President Trump claims that he's finished answering written questions from Special Counsel Robert Mueller, but has yet to submit them. The president addressed the Russia investigation during a bill signing today at the White House. He says that it was him and not his lawyers who wrote the answers, but also continued to blast the probe as a hoax. This comes after the president sent out a series of tweets Thursday calling the probe a total mess, accusing investigators of going absolutely nuts and suggesting it was ruining lives. Here's what he had to say about it today.
There should have never been any Mueller investigation because there was never anything done wrong. There was no collusion. There never has been. You would have known about it a long time ago if there was. There was nothing. They should have never had it.
And you've provided answers, sir?
About what?
To the special counsel. Your lawyers were working with you today on that?
Yeah, it's not, my lawyers aren't working on that. I'm working on that. I write the answers. My lawyers don't write answers. I write answers.
Okay.
I was asked a series of questions. I've answered them very easily. Very easily.
Joining me now from the Politico, actually from our CBS News Bureau, Daniel Lippman. He's the co-author of Politico Playbook. So, Dan, you heard the president right there. He reportedly met with his legal team several days this week to prepare answers to those written questions in the Russia probe. He says he hasn't sent them yet. What do you make of what we heard today?
Yeah, I think, we were all expecting him to answer the questions eventually because he didn't want to do this in a live fashion where he would be much more likely to perjure himself. And so if it's a written questions, it kind of reminds me of when you get a test back from your teacher and you can do it at home, and so you can look at the books and make sure that you don't get anything wrong. And so he's relieved that he's probably doing it that way, but that doesn't mean that there's going to be no follow-ups, and so he's not out of the woods yet.
You mentioned the follow-ups. I mean, it took such a while to get to this point where the president is answering those questions, a lot of legal back and forth. So do we have a sense of when he might submit those answers? Do we know?
We don't know yet. I think his lawyers still want to review them more and kind of fine-tooth comb them. And I think they also want to try to avoid the prospect of follow-ups, because if Mueller and his team are not satisfied with what the president wrote in his answers, then they could kind of lash out and say, well, this is ridiculous. This is not actually answering the questions of what was in your head as you were firing Comey and trying to obstruct the investigation. And even without these answers, they could still have grounds for obstruction just with his actions in the White House to fire Comey and tell Comey to go easy on Flynn. So there's really everything is up in the air still.
And Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker reportedly told Senator Lindsey Graham that Mueller's investigation will proceed. Do you think that comment and that sentiment will anyway alleviate the concerns about his appointment?
I think, a lot of senators, they want reassurances, particularly Democrats. They've been working on this Mueller protection bill to prevent any harm from going to his investigation, and for the American people to actually see the report that Mueller has been working on. And so if we actually get a new attorney general sooner rather than later, then one of the first questions will be, are you pledging to protect Mueller from any action taken by Trump to remove him? And if they answer in the affirmative, then they will have a much easier chance of getting confirmed. I think what the most interesting detail from my colleague's story on this was how the next Attorney General, even Matt Whitaker, they are not saying what they're going to do per se. They're not saying they're going to recuse themselves, but so they are keeping some ambiguity. So, they're not going to tell President Trump, well, I'm going to, get rid of Mueller. But they're not going to tell senators publicly, at least yet, that I'm going to disabuse the president of any notions that he has of wanting to protect Mueller. And so they are trying to not really address this issue in public.
Your colleagues at Politico also reporting that Republicans are really urging the president to quickly nominate a permanent AG to alleviate some of these concerns. Who are the front runners at this point?
So Chris Christie, he's a top front runner. Even Rudy Giuliani has been talked about, but kind of not very seriously. Alex Azar, who is the HHS secretary. Alex Acosta is the labor secretary. And the last two have been already confirmed by the Senate. And so they are seen as moderates to some extent in terms of they're not, you would sleep well at night if Alex Azar is our Attorney General. And so that would reassure a lot of people on Capitol Hill and in Washington that the next Attorney General is not going to be some partisan hack.
You know, at the same time, we have federal prosecutors who suggested that WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange faces criminal charges. The filing doesn't directly mention Robert Mueller's investigation, but why are people raising concerns and questions about this potentially being related to the Russia investigation?
So Roger Stone, he's in potential legal jeopardy for possibly knowing about what WikiLeaks was going to do or trying to coordinate when they released Clinton and campaign Democratic emails during the 2016 cycle. So it was really rather odd that late last night a professor noticed it and posted it on Twitter. The fact that this prosecutor who was writing a unrelated court document, is also working on the Assange matter, they basically forgot to copy and paste properly that they left Assange's name in there. So I think that person probably had a really bad day at the office today. I
would think so.
This is what people will remember of, revealing a top secret potential indictment, which, he has not been charged publicly yet, but and he's stuck in that Ecuador embassy, and there's no prospect of him getting out right now.
What does it mean for Julian Assange? Do we know yet the fact that this was sort of leaked out?
Well, I think, they've been long trying to get him on various charges. Assange has played a leading role in getting classified military and national security documents out over the last maybe 6-7 years. And so I think prosecutors are trying to figure out a way to maybe offer some, an incentive to the Ecuadorians to get him, to have them turn him over. But it's, we don't know his state of mind. He's grown this big beard, which I thought was interesting. He doesn't look like that, dashing, stateless actor of yesteryear.
All right, Did. So, meanwhile, there were suggestions this week that there could potentially be another major White House staffing shakeup coming up. Where does that stand, and who do you think it could be next potentially to leave?
So a lot of White House people are in limbo, and even cabinet officials. We had a story about how Wilbur Ross, the Commerce Secretary, he seems to be about to leave in the next couple months. And Mick Mulvaney, he is, thought of as maybe angling for that job because he may think he's not going to get chief of staff. Looks like John Kelly might leave if Kirstjen Nielsen is fired, and we're expecting that sometime soon because Kirsten and John are really close friends and allies, and John Kelly might just think enough with this. And I think Trump is deciding whether to name Nick Ayers, who is the vice president's chief of staff, but a guy known as with many, he has sharp elbows, and so a lot of White House people are afraid of him. They want to try to block him. They view him as very ambitious, but he's also a smart guy and has navigated well in Trump and Pence world. And so Trump really doesn't like to pull the trigger on these things. And so, but oftentimes some people leave on Friday afternoons. And so we might see one or two people leave later today.
It's certainly true. Friday is a very busy day for that White House. White Houses in general over the years. Hey, but speaking of White House, I want to ask you about CNN and Jim Acosta, who won that legal battle today that got him his hard pass back to get into the White House. The president said that he wants total freedom of the press, but he also added that there needs to be some level of decorum. How do you see this feud playing out now?
Well, it'll be interesting to hold Trump accountable for that promise of decorum, given that he always slams the media as fake news and enemies of the people. And so that type of rhetoric has not helped in the decorum department. But I think it'll be interesting to watch how the legal battle plays out and whether the White House will continue in its efforts to try to keep Acosta from getting his credential back permanently now. We spotted him in Playbook as the afternoon edition of him right after that ruling, going into the White House, reclaiming his workplace, basically, in terms of the press area. And so I think they're going to try to lay out rules of how many questions you can ask the president, when do you have to sit down. But it'll be really hard to do that. Journalists are a rowdy bunch.
You said it, not me. Daniel Lippman, thank you very much for joining us, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.